Hi. You may be aware that What's Going On with Shipping has been on vacation this week. We embarked on a ocean cruise down to the Caribbean, but it just seems as if as soon as we let loose our lines from the United States, the ship hit the fan. And so I thought I'd do a quick abbreviated What the Ship. 5 stories across the maritime spectrum, what's happening in shipping today. If you're new to the channel, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so be alerted about news stories as they come out. So, story number 1, we were talking the other day about what the closure of the Straits of Hormuz could do. And I talked about the fact that I did not think the Straits of Hormuz are likely to be closed. Well, we have this story here about President Trump lightening the sanctions on Iran, clarifying that China can still receive Iranian oil. That was the big issue that I talked about in the video, is that the nature of Persian Gulf oil has changed tremendously. Back in the 80s during the tanker war, and even as early as the 2010s, a large chunk of that Persian Gulf oil was going to Europe and the United States. That's not the case anymore. Instead, the vast majority of that oil is heading to Asia, principally China. And cutting off that oil to China would have been a non-starter. I mean, there's just not enough oil out there to source to China without Iranian oil. Plus, I also made the point that it is Iran that needs to be exporting that oil. Shutting the Straits of Hormuz would be in their worst interest. So here we see that clarification about that. We've had some lively discussion from President Trump regarding the situation between Iran and Israel and the ceasefire that was announced. If you haven't seen it, you should really go see that. All right, let's go ahead to our next story. Story number 2 deals with the Federal Maritime Commission. I have a full video dropping later this week. I filmed it before I left, talking about who's in control of U.S. shipping. Well, it just announced the chairman of the Federal Maritime Commission, Sola, who is up for his term, is not seeking re-election. There are 5 commissioners on the FMC. The Federal Maritime Commission is that element within the United States that oversees international shipping. Well, there's 1 vacancy currently on the FMC, and with Chairman Sola stepping down now, there will be 2 vacancies. That leaves 1 Republican and 2 Democrats on the Federal Maritime Commission. And with the U.S. so adamant about shipbuilding and revitalizing U.S. shipping, this is a gap that can't last very long. So I'll be interested to see who President Trump nominates to those 2 potential vacancies. Up to 3 members of 1 political party can be in the Federal Maritime Commission, and right now, Commissioner Dye is the sole Republican sitting on that seat. And again, my video will be dropping later this week that talks about this whole issue in some more detail. Story number 3, liquefied natural gas rates surge to an 8-month high. So one of the largest exporters of liquefied natural gas behind the United States and Australia is the nation of Qatar, or Qatar. I don't know how you want to pronounce it. Everybody pronounces it different. But Qatar is one of the major exporters. And with the situation going on in the Straits of Hormuz, countries are looking to source their gas from other sites. The other player in this is Russia, and Russia is now just opening up their LNG facilities in the northern route. We just saw the first passage of a container ship and a liquefied natural gas carrier through that northern route, and Russia is offloading liquefied natural gas like crazy out of their Arctic fields. And the spike in rates has to do with the fact that the liquefied natural gas has to travel longer distances. Those are ton miles. And when you have to travel further miles per ton, that increases the cost. All right, let's go to story number 4. So my buddy Mike Schuller over at G-Captain posted this story right here, talking about the collapse of transits through the Straits of Hormuz. I'm going to differ a little bit on the term collapse with Mike on this one. What we saw from the data coming out from the UK Maritime Trade Operations and the Joint Maritime Information Center was that for June, the average transits, both east and westbound, through the Straits of Hormuz was roughly around 115 vessels. On June 23rd, it was down to just over 90. I'm not sure that classifies as a collapse. It's definitely a decrease. And this has to do with a lot of vessels we saw do the U-turns. You had a lot of YouTubers, a lot of news agencies talking about ships turning around. What a lot of that had to do was brokers and oil companies decided to either route their vessels to load cargo from different sources or the companies had the ships hold outside the Persian Gulf before they were ready to load in the Persian Gulf. They didn't want to get their ships potentially stuck in the Persian Gulf, even though I think it was a very unlikely thing to happen. So we have this slight dip in June 23rd, as you can see on the chart here. I think this is all going to go back to normal now with the ceasefire in place. The question is, does the ceasefire hold? Regardless, we're still going to see ships transiting through the Straits of Hormuz. That is not going to change. Our fifth story, the car carrier Morning Midas. We've been tracking this for 3 weeks. This ship was on fire in the northern Pacific. Ship was en route from China down to Mexico. The crew found a fire on one of the car decks. The car decks involved both internal combustion engine cars, hybrids, and EVs. The crew abandoned ship. They were picked up by a passing Costco vessel. The crew from Resolve Marine went out there to do the rescue. However, now the U.S. Coast Guard and Resolve Marine are reporting that the ship has sunk. I've seen photos. Unfortunately, I can't share them with you right now. I will as soon as I can. That shows the ship completely gutted by fire. But more importantly, the ship was down by the bow and listing to port. You may ask, well, how does the ship down by the bow listing to port? Well, the fire had run through the entire interior of the vessel. When the fire runs through the interior of the vessel, it will consume the cars. But more importantly, the straps, the cloth straps that hold the cars in place, will be burnt through. And as the ship experiences high winds, high weather, and it rolls and rocks, the cars begin to move. And what probably happened is the ship got wind on one side, listed to one side, the vehicles all piled down forward. That would lean the ship over. Some of the vents probably hit the water, started taking in water, and that led to the vessel capsizing and sinking. Again, we don't know what the ultimate cause for this fire is, and we never will, with the ship sitting right now in the bottom of the Pacific Ocean at about 10,000 feet of water. But what we can say is this: regardless of where it started, when you carry electrical vehicles and hybrids on board, they are nearly impossible to put out once they're involved in a fire. If that fire started with internal combustion engine cars and spread, or if it started with the EVs, it doesn't matter. Because the fixed CO2 systems that they have on board, the massive low-pressure liquid CO2 systems they have on board, cannot suppress a lithium-ion battery fire because it self-generates. It creates oxygen. And so the fire burns. And what we see is the entire vessel was burned over. Deck after deck, the paint flaked off. It was just a fire that consumed the entire vessel. All right, that's our top 5 stories. But wait, we have a bonus for you. We're on cruise. Thought you deserve a little bit extra. You may get a little bit of wind noise in this video. I apologize. Try to find a place with the wind in my back and seclude it. But story number 6 here is that Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy announced the resignation of the superintendent and deputy superintendent at the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy. Vice Admiral Joanne Noonan and Rear Admiral David Wolf announced their resignations from the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy. Now, Secretary Duffy was just up there for graduation. These resignations come right after graduation. Duffy has been adamant about making changes to the Merchant Marine Academy. These need to be done. The Merchant Marine Academy is in atrocious condition. It really is. It has been neglected for not years, but decades. The money hasn't been put into it. The facilities, the housing, you name it. It is horrible. So much so that they can't even attract midshipmen to attend the university. And so what Duffy is trying to do here, I think, by the resignations of Noonan and Wolf, is bring in new leadership, kind of mark a new change at the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy. I'll be interested to see who they look toward to do it. I'm sure there is a list of Navy admirals and Coast Guard admirals who want this gig. It'd be amazing to me. I mean, I could think of a few people. Like, I can think of one right off the top of my head who may be interested. But I think he's on vacation right now. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so be alerted about new videos as they come out. Leave a comment, share it across social media, and if you can, support the page. How do you do that? You hit the super thanks button down below, or head on over to Patreon and become a monthly, yearly subscriber. Believe it or not, this is my yearly vacation right here on a cruise with my son. My son and his buddies wanted to take a cruise. Not a cruise I really wanted to take, but I will enjoy a day at the beach on a cruise. I strongly recommend always going out on a ship. It is the cure for everything. This is Sal, signing off.